Hey everyone, my name is Sean, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you my M.E.S.S deck, or my Mythical Endymion Spellbook Soul deck. And the reason why we call it M.E.S.S is because it is a combination of 4 different engines into one single deck. For those who maybe don't know, an engine is a group of cards that work really well together, just as a small group within your deck to perform a single job. And so we're going to break this deck profile down engine by engine and talk about what the cards do. We're trying to make this into a tutorial because I know a lot of people find Pendulums difficult to use, and so I want to break this into parts which maybe will help you think about it a little bit easier. But yeah, you will have to take some time to practice this deck, and all I'll say is with Pendulums is every hand is a puzzle. You just have to know your cards and use them wisely in order to make the best board you possibly can. So let's get to it. So first of all, we have our Magician's Souls engine, and that is a combination of these following 10 cards here. So Magician's Souls, if you don't know, is a level 1 monster, and you can summon this card to the field by sending a Dark Spellcaster monster from your deck to the graveyard. It is a cost to do so, so it's really easy to summon. And then when this card is on the field, you can send 2 spell or trap cards from your hand or the field to the graveyard to draw that many cards. It's a nice little draw engine. It gets you deeper into your deck, and works really well with some other cards that we're going to talk about in just a moment. The ideal targets to send to the graveyard for this are your boss monsters, which are Mythical Beast Jackal King or Endymion the Mighty Master of Magic. They fill this role perfectly, so if you're wondering what to send, that's what you want to send to the graveyard. We also play 3 copies of Dark Magic Veil in this deck because it summons a Dark Spellcaster type monster from your hand or your graveyard for the simple cost of 1000 life points. Being able to recover your monsters is very important, and so combine this with Magician's Souls, it allows you to basically instantly search out one of your boss monsters and put it to the field because you can just summon it back from the graveyard. Similarly, we also play 3 copies of Magician's Restage, and this card is a Monster Reborn effect for level 3 or lower spellcaster type monsters, and this helps you link climb and get into your bigger link monsters quite nicely. And so basically with what you do with this card is, say you have Magician's Souls on the field, you link it away for something small like Link Karibo, and then you play this card to summon her back, and then link it into something else bigger like Cross Sheep or Crowley. Magician's Restage is really nice as well because once you activate its effect to summon a card from the graveyard, it just sits on the field doing nothing, and so it's a perfect candidate to use with Magician's Souls effect to send it to the graveyard to draw 2 or more cards. Restage isn't also just limited to summoning Magician's Souls. You can also bring back other spellcasters like Spellbook, Magician of Prophecy, but what's really cool about this card is you can summon back things like Millennium Eyes Restrict as well, and bringing that back to your field so it can sit on the field and negate your opponent's effects. Last card we have is Monster Reborn, and so as a package you have 7 different ways to summon back spellcasters from your graveyard, which is really kind of cool. And yeah, so now we're going to go on to our next engine, and that is the Spellbook engine. Now I talked about this before in the Dark Magician deck profile I did, but if in case you didn't see that, Spellbook is a very small engine which works in basically any spellcaster deck or any deck where you don't need to use a normal summon and you want a bit more draw power for your deck, and you can fit about these 7 cards in your main deck or so. And how it works is Magician of Prophecy, whenever its normal summon, can add a Spellbook card from your deck to your hand. You can either choose to add Knowledge or Secrets from your deck to your hand. Similarly, Secrets can do basically the same thing. When you activate this, you can add a Spellbook card, and you can choose either Knowledge or Prophecy to add to your hand. And so you've got 2 really nice searches between these cards. You end up on Spellbook of Knowledge, which requires you to send a spellcaster monster from your field to the graveyard, or a Spellbook card from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard to draw 2 more cards. And so what you ideally want to do is do something like normal summon Prophecy, get Secrets, play Secrets, get Knowledge, use Knowledge on Prophecy, and then send it to the graveyard. And remember, Prophecy can also be brought back with things like Magician's Restage, so it kind of works really nicely as well in the long run. And being able to draw more cards is always something you want to do in Pendulums. Our link monster here is Crowley, the first Prophecy, and he is just a little bit of an addition for this deck for you to dig into your deck if you don't already have your Spellbook engine, because when this card is link summoned you can reveal 3 different spellbook cards from your deck, and your opponent will choose one of them for you to add. And really, there isn't really a bad option for you to choose. Whether they get you Secrets, Prophecy, or Knowledge, you're going to be able to use any one your opponent adds for you. And so you kind of always wants to make this going early in the game, so you can bait out your opponent's negates. Things like Ash Blossom, Joyous Spring, if they use it against this card, that's perfectly fine, because that way your other monsters don't have to worry about dealing with that type of interruption. We're now going to go to the end for this deck and talk about the Mythical Beast monsters, because there are only 6 of them in this build, and that is Jackal King and Master Cerberus. And both of these can be functioned as your boss monster, but they also work well as summoning and draw and searching power. We'll start off with Master Cerberus, because Master Cerberus, when it is used in the Pendulum scale, you can destroy it to add a level 7 or lower Mythical Beast effect monster from your deck to your hand, that target being mainly Jackal King. So you activate this card, destroy it, and then you get Jackal King to your hand. When this card is destroyed, because it's a Pendulum card, it will go to your extra deck, which is really nice for the next effect of Jackal King. And Jackal King's Pendulum effect is, if you destroy this card while it's in your Pendulum zone, you can summon a card from your extra deck to the field that's Mythical Beast. And so you play Master Cerberus, destroy it, get Jackal King, destroy it, summon Master Cerberus, and then you've got 2800 monsters on your field who has got some really cool effects, and we'll talk about that right now. Both of these cards, when they're on the field, anytime a spell card is activated, they get 2 spell counters on their card instead of just a normal 1 spell counter, which is really nice at getting those spell counters as fast as you possibly can. The unique effect of Master Cerberus is 1, when it cannot be destroyed by card effects while there are 4 or more spell counters on your field, and 2, you can remove 4 spell counters from your field, target one of your opponent's monsters, banish it, and then Master Cerberus will get an attack boost equal to the attack of the monster you banished, which is a really cool way and easy way to kind of go for game, because he gets to some really insane attack numbers via this method. You can't summon him too often, however, because he's a level 8. Mostly your highest scale is level 8, unfortunately, so you're not going to summon this monster too much. However, you can summon it with Jackal King, so there's always that as an option. Jackal King, however, is definitely more commonly used in Pendulum decks, and you can certainly play this deck without Master Cerberus if you just want to play Jackal King, although I think it's nice to have it as well. And Jackal King's effect is that once per turn, when an opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can remove 2 spell counters from your field and negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. So this is your way of stopping your opponent playing monster effects during their turn or your turn, and which really helps you to kind of go for game. Now, this is one of your goals for your deck. Your deck wants to summon as many copies of Jackal King, so you have as many monster indicates as you need to in order to stop your opponent from playing the game. And that now leads us into our next boss monster, Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic, who is a lot like Doctor Strange if you ask me. Now, while Mythical Beast Jackal King is your boss monster to stop monster effects, Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic, is your boss monster to stop spells and trap cards. And he requires that you return 1 card you control with a spell counter to your hand, and if you do, negate the activation and then destroy that card. You then give Endymion the spell counters that were on that card that you return to your hand. Now, using Endymion is going to take a while. It is a bit wordy. A little bit of a fact, this card has the most text on a single card in the whole of Yu-Gi-Oh! But just to keep it simple as possible, to stop spells and trap cards, you have him on the board. To stop monster effects, you have Jackal King on the board. Endymion also has its own Pendulum effect as well, and that is, while it's in the Pendulum zone, you can remove 6 spell counters from your field, and you can destroy the number of cards your opponent controls that can have a spell counter up to that number of cards on the field. Sorry, let me explain that again, properly. While he's in your Pendulum zone, you can remove 6 spell counters from your field, special summon this card from the Pendulum zone, then count the number of cards you have that can have spell counters on them. Then you get to destroy up to that many cards on the field, and if you do, place spell counters on this card equal to the number of cards destroyed. Very complicated card, but just to make it simple, if you have a board with cards that can have spell counters on them, and you summon him through his own Pendulum effect, you get to destroy that many cards that your opponent controls, and then he gets spell counters as a reward for doing so. and yeah, he's your main way of destroying your opponent's cards, particularly when you're going second. Now, to wrap up this profile, we'll talk about the rest of the Pendulum Endymion package here. Reasoning, by the way, is also there. Reasoning, and Pop Designs is there. I'm not going to really talk about them, just that you'll be playing them in this deck. For Endymion package here, these monsters are a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try and make them really simple for you. When these cards are in the Pendulum scale, they all have an effect that can summon a monster that can hold a spell counter from a different place. They can either summon it from your deck, which is what Summon of Endymion does. Magister can summon a card from your extra deck, and Reflection can summon a card from your hand. So, in a nutshell, while they're in your Pendulum scale, you can remove 3 spell counters in order to summon a monster from your deck, extra deck, or your hand to the field. Their on-field effect is a little bit different. Magister's on-field effect is that you can remove 3 spell counters from your field and summon a Pendulum card from your deck that you can place a spell counter on. This is a really nice way during your opponent's turn because it's a quick effect to summon a monster, one of your boss monsters from your deck. So if all of a sudden you decide, man, I really need a spell trap negate, you use this effect to go get Endymion, monster negate, get Jackal King, or you can even go get Reflection, because Reflection has a really cool effect too. And that is when this card is special summoned, you can return 1 card you control that can hold a spell counter, and 1 card your opponent controls, both to the hand. And yeah, so it's got a nice little bounce effect as well. The last part is a Servant of Endymion. We don't really use her onboard effect, but she can give all of your cards spell counters that you can discard a card to do so, but you don't really use her for that. You just basically want her for a scale effect. The last card which we're going to talk about in the main deck is, if I can press buttons properly, is Spellbook Power, Spell Power Mastery. This card searches out any one of your Endymion cards and adds it to your hand, and then you get to put a spell counter on a card on your field. It's a really cool way of searching it out, and you're going to basically want to use this any card time you see it. Now your extra deck. Extra deck is basically just another way for you to get more boss monsters to the field, and so we'll go through them quite quickly. We have El Shadow Winda, which can be summoned with instant fusion, and you can then summon her back using things like Dark Magic Veil. Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. If you make Absolute Dragon using 2 level 7 monsters, being Endymion and Reflection, you can make your Absolute Dragon, then send it to the graveyard to summon Vortex Dragon, and Vortex Dragon then has an Omni negate that can negate any type of monster effect, spell effect, or trap effect. You have 1 copy of Link Paripo, just to send your cards to the graveyard in order to summon them back and help you link climb. Amarage for the same reason. Cross Sheep is nice because Cross Sheep gives you monsters back from the graveyard. If you do Cross Sheep and then summon a fusion monster like Vortex Dragon underneath it, you can get a level 4 or lower monster back from your graveyard, which is cool, because then you can link climb with that card into bigger monsters. Daybreaker, the Shining Magical Warrior, is here, so that if any time a spellcaster monster is summoned to a zone it points to, you can get an extra counter on this card, and then you can remove 2 counters from this card to destroy a card on the field. IP Masquerena is here to link summon during your opponent's turn, which is really nice because you can do that with a Nightmare package here to destroy spells and traps or shuffle cards in from the field. And then we have Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians, who is your boss link monster for your deck. Selene is a really nice card. She can summon back more monsters from your graveyard or your hand as a quick effect by removing 3 spell counters from your field. She also gets a lot of spell counters when you summon her, equal to the number of spell cards in either player's graveyard and on the field. This card is used outside of Pendulum decks because her deck effect is so powerful, and she's just able to summon any spell caster you want during your opponent's turn, which can be really nice and another way to get your big monsters out into your field. The final monster we have is Borosaur Dragon, and Borosaur is there because he's just a powerful beater. He helps you to go for game. So, complicated deck profile, I know, but Pendulum is very, very rewarding and very, very fun to play. And so I'm going to try and show you what this deck does in action with some gameplay right now. Alright, let's get into some gameplay here. I'm going to try my best to show you what Pendulums are like in action and explain what we're doing as we go. Now, Pendulums don't always have a single unilateral goal. They're not they play like a combo deck, but they're not so much a combo deck where every single board you're going to make is the same. What you need to do is just have a good understanding of how your cards work and just try to make the best board you possibly can. Now, I'm seeing here that with Kira playing Pot of Duality, he's playing a lot of trap cards and he's playing a control style deck. So we're going to have to deal with a lot of trap cards. Now, if you remember in my deck profile, your two main boss monsters are Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic, and Mythical Beast Jackal King, where one can negate spells and traps and the other can negate monster effects. Because we're going to be dealing with a lot of spells and traps here, we're going to be negating a lot of spells and monster effects here, so we're going to be relying a lot on Endymion's effects to get us through this game. So we're now going to go to our turn here, we're going into turn 2 and we're going to draw. And the way you play Pendulums is you don't play cards really which directly remove your opponent's threats. What you try to do the best you can is you try to play through their forms of interruption as much as possible and then still have a way to carry on playing afterwards. So what I'm using here to begin with is I'm trying to go for my weaker engines, my Spellbook engine and my Magician's Souls engine, to try and see what forms of interruption my opponent might be willing to use and that I can bait out to begin with. And as you saw, when I summoned Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, he responded with Ash Blossom, and that's great. Now I don't have to worry about dealing with Ash Blossom later on in this turn if I want to do any more searching or any more drawing, that for that matter. So we've used Magician's Soul to send Jackal King to the graveyard because I've already got 2 copies of Mighty Master of Magic, which is always really nice to have. And now we're going to summon out Crowley the First Prophecy. Crowley the First Prophecy is going to allow us to do more searching. It's going to allow us to go back into our deck and get more Spellbook cards out. So again, we're just trying to see, what will you respond, will you activate something? And he does. He chooses to activate Crackdown. And our Crackdown has the ability where it can take one of your opponent's monsters, and while you have control of that monster, you cannot use its effects and you cannot attack with it. It's a very powerful card, but the downside of using Crackdown is if that monster has already activated its effect, it doesn't stop it. It doesn't negate the effect if it's already been used. So because Crowley came out first and I have player priority, I already used his effect, so I'm still going to get my search. And so Crackdown, you've taken my monster, sure, that's fine, but I've still managed to basically get rid of that threat. I now don't have to worry about dealing with that card. And that's another form of interruption that I'm able to play through. And this is the idea when you're playing Pendulums. You're just thinking, how can I continue to bait out your cards until I put my big cards on the field? Now, we are activating our Pendulum scales. We've activated Magister, which is our high scale, and Reflection, which is our low scale. And before we go for a Pendulum summon, I'm going to use Spellbook of Secrets again to try to bait out more cards. And I'm going to add Spellbook of Knowledge, and he's not responded to that, so I'm not too worried about that. By activating our spell cards as well, we are giving our Pendulum scales more spell counters, and we need cards with spell counters on the field in order to use our Endymion effect. So we're going to summon out our 2 Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic, and assuming he doesn't have something like Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment, Solemn Strike, and he doesn't negate this summon, we are going to be in a very, very good position here, because we've got 2 very big monsters on the board, and both of them are going to be able to stop any spell or trap cards my opponent tries to use. So we're waiting to see if he responds to them, responds in any kind, and nope, we get passed back, and so we're very, very fortunate here. Now, at this point here, you've got to think about how much you want to really extend. I've already got 2 monsters on the field. He's got 2 face down cards. I can carry on doing more moves, but I've got enough to stop him from activating any more threats or to destroy his threat. So is it really worth doing so? Kind of yes and kind of no. The answer really, you've got to kind of weigh these up answers all the time with Pendulums. And you've got to work out, is it worth using more resources or if it's worth waiting to the next following turn. In this current situation, what I can do is I can actually use my monsters to link summon and then leave them in the extra deck and then hopefully summon them back in the next turn. However, that's going to leave me without some negation. What else can I do here? I can also use the effect of Magister in the scale, and that's something I actually am going to do, but I'm not going to do it right now. We're going to just actually play it safe, keep on to our resources, and we're going to attack and see if Kira responds, which he doesn't. So first we attack into Crowley, doing 1800 damage, and then we're going to attack directly with Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic, and that's going to do another 2800 damage. Pendulum cards are so powerful. Almost every single turn, you almost feel like you're doing lethal damage. And we almost managed to basically reduce him by less than half of his life points. And if our monsters stay on the field, we pretty much have this game set and done and in the bag here. So we are going to extend a little bit more, be able to use our cards a little bit more, because my opponent might find a way to destroy our scales, which is something people like to do a lot against pendulums. So I want to get the full power out of them, and I don't have to worry too much about my opponent responding right now, because I still have one Endymion on the board. So I activate Spellbook of Knowledge. Normally when you send a spellcaster to the graveyard with this, you get to draw 2 cards. However, because the Pendulum card went to the extra deck, I didn't get to draw, but I only used this just because I wanted to give Magister 3 spell counters in order to use this effect. And now that we're using this effect, we're able to summon it to the field and also summon back the Endymion we just sent to the extra deck. And that's going to give us another monster on board. The reason why I wanted that was because Magister has a really cool effect, and that it has a quick effect where if I remove 3 spell counters from my field during my opponent's turn, I can summon another monster from my deck. So that's going to let me do more searching as well. So we're going to end our turn here. We're going to end with 2 Spell and Trap Negates and 1 Searcher on our field, and we're going to pass to Kira here. And really, at this point here, we're in a very, very comfortable position. Even if they manage to destroy my cards, Endymion has the effect where if it ends its, if we end the turn with, if it gets destroyed with a spell counter on, I get to search any normal spell card and add it to my hand. So that's another way just to keep our plays going. Kira's going to activate Crackdown on Endymion and try to take it. Now, if the Endymion had a spell counter on it, he would not be able to target it as well because it protects itself, but this one doesn't have a counter on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave our cards with counters on in the monster zones, and we're going to return Reflection, and because we returned the Reflection that had 2 counters, Endymion now gets 2 counters. And at this point here, we've got enough really to seal the deal and go for game here. So what you're going to see is actually Kira's going to scoop it up and he's going to end the game here. And guys, hopefully this was a fairly easy to understand introduction into Endymion Pendulums. If you want to see more, if you've got questions, feel free to let me know down in the comments down below. I think this is a very powerful deck, it's very rewarding, and people that put the time into a deck like this really enjoy playing it. But if you want to see me play more, feel free to let me know, and thank you guys as always for watching my videos. I'll see you soon, take care.